Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Ask Windows Essential, where we take your questions. This week we're going to talk about tri-foldables and then whether or not that'll ever happen in the PC space, what we expect for Surface 4, could it actually go ARM, and what's my favorite non-Surface PC right now. All that and more. Stay tuned. All right, the first question is going to be for Zach, and I know a lot of people are interested in this one, is what do we know about a Surface Go 4 and whether or not it will go ARM based? I know a lot of people would like to see this happen, and although we just got a Surface Go 3 recently, what about Surface Go 4, Zach? Are you hearing anything? What are the odds you think this will actually go with a Qualcomm processor?
So, great question. I think it's pretty likely. It's not 100% confirmed yet. They're still sort of deciding whether or not the next one will be ARM, but it is a discussion they are finally having. You know, the last couple of years, I feel like we've always said, oh, if only the next one was ARM, and then it never was. This time, it appears that it's possible thanks to Microsoft actually considering it internally. Regarding what the actual ARM chip will be, we don't know. It will likely be a lower end one because if you remember, the Surface Go is supposed to be a sort of budget choice, right? It's not supposed to be this high-end premium device, so I wouldn't expect any sort of real design changes to it. You know, I think the bezels will remain the same and stuff. I can't imagine them changing things up like that. But on the inside, it would just be powered by likely a Qualcomm 7C generation of some kind, and that should hopefully keep it at its low $399 starting price. There will likely still be an Intel option as well for the higher tier / business SKUs for those who want that kind of Intel processor, but I think the base model for the Go 4 is likely to be an ARM based one finally, and it's all part of Microsoft's big push on Windows and ARM, right? You've seen it this year with Visual Studio going native, the Project Volterra dev box being an ARM device, and then I think into 2023 we're going to see more Surfaces sort of adopt ARM as well, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think your analysis is quite right there, and obviously what you're hearing from Microsoft. And so what I could envision them doing is doing like an HCX Gen 2 chip, which by the time Surface Go 4 would come out would be sort of the budget option, even though it's the top tier one right now. Although Gen 3 is about to hit, you know, that would be a more affordable option. Although we don't know what else Qualcomm is going to be up to. They also have the 7C series and the 8C series, so they could have other options there coming out as well. But I do see this sort of, they could do ARM and, as you mentioned, do Intel for the business class sort of version of this laptop, or mini PC, we should say. I think this would be really awesome. I think a lot of people are right in wanting ARM on this, and I think by the time this would hit the streets, which probably won't be till late 2023, ARM will be in a really good place with Windows.
Great. Okay, up next, what are your thoughts on tri-foldables, and do you think they're feasible in the PC space? Dan, I think you should take this one.
So the new season of Westworld is now starting up on HBO, and we're not plugging them necessarily, but that is a show that has sort of popularized the idea of a trifold PC, as in that show they do carry around a device very much like that. And I remember when I first saw it, I thought, wow, that's something I could see Microsoft doing at some point, because it fits in your back pocket. Yeah, it's a tall device, it's not small, but kind of like Surface Duo itself. But then it opens up and you can use it as a phone, and then you can use it as like a full-on tablet. And that seems to be very much what something Microsoft would like to do. Now, I could see, a few versions of this happening. We do know Microsoft has a patent out for such a device. That doesn't mean it's coming anytime soon, as the technology required to make that happen is probably still a few years out. But the benefit here would be you could have a single screen device, so use it as a normal phone. They can open up and have a dual screen effect, and that'd be very much like Surface Duo and the ecosystem that they're building up around that. And then you can open up all three screens and have a little Surface Pro basically. And you imagine a pen support for all this. You kind of get the best of all the worlds here. Yeah, it won't be a full PC, but it's not a phone either. It's like this in-between device. So I could definitely see them wanting to pursue that. The question is, when would that happen? Obviously, I don't think that would happen for at least 2 years, 3 years, 4 years out. But I do think as we head into the era of foldable PCs and foldable devices, we're going to start to see OEMs and manufacturers experiment with different types of designs. We saw this with the original 2-in-1 convertibles that came out around 2011, 2012, 2013. Companies experimented with things that twisted around, the screen spun, and they all did different things. And we eventually settled on what is known today as a Surface Pro design, or a 360 hinge design. And so I think that's what's going to happen here. So we'll see a lot of experimentation. Some of it will work, some of it won't work, and then in a couple years we'll land on something. But yeah, I do see Microsoft sort of going down this path as the ultimate dream Surface device. I think Panos would be very excited about that. All right, this next question's for Zach. Are we ever going to get a true iPad Pro 11 competitor from Microsoft or its partners?
It's an interesting question. I think it's possible, to be honest with you. You know, the Surface Pro and the Surface Pro X have been pretty great products, and Apple's been doing its own thing on the iPad side. I think every year the iPad Pro becomes slightly more like a laptop or a direct Surface Pro competitor. So at this point, Apple has two different sizes. They have the 12.9-inch iPad, which is the most sort of comparable to a Surface Pro or Surface Pro X. Then they have an 11-inch iPad Pro, which in size would be more comparable to, say, a Surface Go. But the Surface Go and the 11-inch iPad Pro are not in the same league. The iPad Pro is a flagship device at 11 inches, and the Surface Go at 10.5 inches is an entry-level product. So could Microsoft take the sort of flagship Surface Pro, make a smaller version? Yeah, I do. I think that's very possible. Internally, they've certainly prototyped that, and while I don't think that's possible for this year. I think it might be too late at this point. I would not be surprised if an 11-inch Surface Pro shows up maybe next year or the year after, because as we just talked about with the Surface Go 4, if that moves to ARM, that's still going to be a low-powered device. Just because it's the same size as the iPad Pro, you couldn't compare the two. They're just not in the same game. However, a flagship Surface Pro with, say, an Intel chip or maybe even an ARM chip, with the flagship Qualcomm processor of the time, that would be a very sort of interesting product that could go head-to-head with an 11-inch iPad Pro. And I would be shocked if Microsoft didn't try to do something along those lines in the next year or two.
Really interesting. Personally speaking, I don't see the point of such a device. You know, I look at something like the Surface Pro 8. I'm not sure why it needs to be that much smaller. Maybe that's because I'm biased and I'm getting older. My eyes are not as good, but I don't really want necessarily a smaller screen. Although I understand the appeal to go a little smaller, I'm not sure going to like an 11-inch necessarily gains you that much more of a tiny PC compared to what Surface Pro 8 or 9 will be at that point. So I'm sure, you know, curious about how they would do this and differentiate it from the, you know, larger Surface Pro in terms of pricing and, you know, how much smaller it really is. But I guess if there's a market for it, then sure, why not?
You know, we have been seeing a lot of improvements to the tablet experience of Windows 11 in the last few months. And many of us have been wondering why. What is the point? Windows isn't great on tablets. We all know that. There aren't many Windows tablets to buy. Perhaps this is all part of it, right? Microsoft is building up Windows 11 so that if they were to ever do a flagship 11-inch tablet, the OS, that being Windows, would make sense on a screen size that small. And of course, you could still use it as a laptop, but maybe the 11-inch version would be more marketed as a tablet that has a keyboard that you can attach. Whereas, as we know with the Surface Pro today, it's certainly advertised as a laptop with a keyboard you can unattach. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. But I do think it's possible, and with all of the upcoming tablet mode improvements to Windows 11, maybe now or next year will be the right time for it. Okay, finally, last but not least, what is your favorite non-Surface PC right now? Go on, Dan, I'll let you start.
All right, so this is a tough question because a lot of the new laptops are announced at CES and over the last few months actually aren't necessarily shipping, or we haven't gotten the review devices yet in stock for them to check out. For instance, Dell XPS 13 Plus, I think, is one of the more interesting devices for 2022, but we don't have the review unit yet for it, so I can't really speak to whether or not it's my favorite device, although I suspect it'll definitely be up there. Same with the new HP Spectre X360 13.5, which gets slight name change this year. Also gets new 12th gen processors, a U series, which I haven't really tried yet either. So I really haven't tried a lot of the new laptops that I think will definitely be in the top tier list of Ultrabooks, and that's where I'm primarily interested in, is the Ultrabook range. Sometimes workstations, not so much gaming laptops, just not my favorite thing these days. That said, if I had to pick one, the one device I do have and I actually really enjoy using tremendously, it is the Lenovo Yoga 9i 14-inch, and it's just an outstanding device. It has a P series 12th gen chip, so this one actually blows away the Mac M1 processor. In fact, it approaches the M1 Max in terms of overall performance. It's very good. It does come at the cost of battery life, which I would describe as it's okay. It's 6 to 7 hours, but it's definitely not going to be an outstanding battery life. You can push that a little bit higher depending on your settings, but it does have a really nice OLED display on there. It has a 360 hinge. It has the sound speaker that's in the hinge, which gives you really good audio. It's a great design. They went this year with everything is curved and rounded on it, so it just feels more comfortable and natural. You also get the pen in the box. You also get a leather sleeve for it. And I think the pricing is right for this device. So it's a premium one, but it has all the bells and whistles that you expect from a premium laptop in 2022. And I think it's just an overall great laptop if you're looking for something that does a little bit of everything. And it's certainly powerful enough. That said, I did mention a few other laptops that I'm interested in, and Surface Pro 9 we are expecting later this year. And I'm a huge sucker for the Surface Pro series and maybe an ARM version as well. So we're gonna have to return to this question, I think, in a couple months. But that's my answer for right now.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the XPS 13 Plus. I think that's one of the first laptops in a long time that sort of has just introduced a newer design for the laptop that's just incredible. It looks amazing. The invisible glass trackpad, the keys that sort of bump up against other keys. Everything about that laptop looks amazing. But for me as well, I'm also quite interested in not being a laptop. I'm also quite interested in the new Huawei MateStation X, which is basically a Surface Studio clone without the ability to sort of bring the display down. That device looks super interesting. I think we've reviewed it on Windows Central actually. Unfortunately, there's no dedicated graphics option. It's only integrated graphics, which is a huge letdown. But other than that, it's a beautiful device, and I would be very interested in having one of those.
All right, so that does it for this episode of Ask Windows Central. Remember, if you have a question, you can hit us up on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino or hit Zach at ZACBOWDEN. You can also send me an email, Daniel@WindowsCentral.com. Just put Ask Windows Central into the subject area. As always, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.